Terry Kennedy is the perfect example of why street fights should be avoided at all costs. He's been in the news recently for being sentenced for the death of a friend and fellow skater. In the early 2000s, Terry was at the height of his career and life. He was a pro skater with tons of sponsors. He was involved with streetwear and sneaker brands. He had reality TV shows, and he was trying his hand at rap. Basically, he had made it a long way from his humble Long Beach upbringings. But all this would soon come crashing down. But how exactly? What could he have possibly been thinking? Well, let's find out. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is the rise and fall of Terry Kennedy, the dark side of skating. But as usual, I can't thank you guys enough for the support that you've been giving the channel, and I ask that you smash the like button for me. Liking and sharing the video is the best way to help us to continue to grow. But with all that being said, let's jump into the story. Terry grew up in 1990s California, and if you're unfamiliar with that, it basically meant that it was gangland, at least for the hood. These were the days where gangbanging was in its prime, and Long Beach, though not the worst of the Cali areas, did have its fair share of gang activity going on too. And at the young age of 15, Terry suffered the worst tragedy a kid could possibly go through. He lost his mom to drugs. Having never known his dad, young Terry was basically on his own. I mean, he had his grandma and his siblings, but to lose his mom had to be tough for a kid to go through. And being an athlete and not really wanting to dive 10 toes into the gang life, he gravitated to an unlikely hobby for kids from the hood. He would turn to skateboarding. As story goes, he had a friend whom he played football with, but who was also a sponsored skater. And Terry would always ask the guy about where he was getting all of the merch that he came down with. And after getting tired of him bugging him, one day he just said, "Dude, why don't you just skate? Or why don't you just go to the skate shop and buy some of the stuff?" Terry initially was hesitant, but he ended up going to Cherry Park in downtown Long Beach one day and saw two other black kids that he knew there. This ultimately made him feel more comfortable with the idea, and he decided that he would give it a shot. In the beginning, Terry would get teased by his friends from the block for skating. He recounts having to literally hide his board because the teasing would get so bad at sometimes that it would lead to fights. And at this time, he basically was just doing it as a hobby. But everything would change for him on the day that he got shot. He made a promise to himself that from that day on, he would skate as if his life depended on it and use it as a way to get out of the hood. And it turns out the guys he was skating with were actually really good. And Terry was a sponge, soaking up as much game as he could. This, combined with his athletic ability from football and basketball, helped him get good quick. His friend group was also able to put him in the door with several industry connections. Only a few years after picking up the sport, Terry would turn pro. And not long after that, he signed with Vans. Even back then, Terry's it factor shone through. In many of the early Baker videos that he appeared in, it would leave memorable impressions on people. Not so much for his skating, but for his personality and camera presence. In fact, his bits were more entertaining than his skating. This was back in the days before social media really blew up, but had TikTok existed, he definitely would have had a large following. He was looked at as a personality guy who just so happened to be able to hold his own on a skateboard. He even got a recurring spot on the Viva La Bam show, going by the name Compton Ass Terry, even though he was actually from Long Beach. He would later go on record stating that he really wasn't even tripping about it too hard. As long as they had the bag, they could have called him anything. And when Terry was 18, he was contacted by Pharrell, who had recently got a deal with Reebok to do Icecream shoes. Using the name Skateboard P and all, Pharrell wanted to launch an accompanying skate team, so he reached out to TK to be his captain. Terry, who was still with Vans at the time, but stated his contract would be up in a few months. And as soon as the deal ended, he was Team Icecream. Vans never really gave Terry a signature shoe, but Icecream granted him his first silhouette. In 2007, he joined forces with Currency and in-house producer Hit to create Fly Society, which started out as a rap group, but later branched out into a streetwear brand as well. And you know what? That's another one that I've completely forgot about. I gotta add them to the list to do a rise and fall video of that too. But anyway, they released a few mixtapes, and the clothing side of it was pretty up to par with other lines of the day. It was one of the brands that Karma Loop used to push hard. But rumors began to circulate that Currency left the group stating that he had actually originally came up with the idea, but Terry wound up going behind his back to trademark the name without talking to him. Terry stated that the reason that Currency actually departed was that he always wanted to be a solo artist. And I'm not really sure. I mean, you can be the judge of who you decide to believe when it comes to that. But the result was Currency was no more, and Terry Kennedy took it on with the rest of his friends. Being on the Icecream team would further help cement the celebrity of TK. They were everywhere at the time. On BET, touring Tokyo, filming reality TV shows. Terry himself was dating Rev Run's daughter Angela, and this would result in guest spots on the Run's House TV show. But being on a skate team of a rapper would also draw shade from more core skaters. Plain Gravy even went as far to release a shirt stating, quote, "Pharrell can't skate on him." It was a whole thing at the time, but ultimately, the Icecream team continued to make moves. However, in 2008, when the economy tanked, it was difficult for everybody, streetwear brands included. Icecream would be dropped by Reebok, and after failing to find a new home, the team wound up disbanding in 2009. But Terry managed to rebound pretty fast. That same year, he joined forces with Supra. Now mind you, Supra was at the peak of their run at the time, and they released several TK series shoes. In 2010, Terry landed his own reality show on BET, Being Terry Kennedy. The show focused on his skating career and how he was managing to take care of his 6 family members through it. It also highlighted his still going rap career and clothing brand, Fly Society. The show, unfortunately, would be canceled after only 1 season, though. And shortly after this, things would kind of slow down a bit for Terry. Fly Society would peter out and his TV appearances would begin to dwindle. But Terry would still continue to skate throughout all of this. However, in 2021, shocking news came out that he had been arrested and charged with the murder of friend and fellow skater, Josiah Kashan. It all started when on one night in July, Terry, his girlfriend, and Josiah were staying together at a hotel in Oak Brook Terrace. The night before the tragedy, they were out partying and got a bit too drunk, despite TK knowing that he had to drive or be driven to the airport the following morning. An argument allegedly broke out the next morning between TK and his girlfriend, as she was too drunk to drive from the night before. He was said to have been getting a bit too aggressive towards her, at which point Josiah had spoken up and tried to calm him down. That is when the shit hit the fan though. TK allegedly got out of the car in a rage and punched Josiah in the face, which led to him falling and accidentally hitting his head on the concrete. This ultimately caused bleeding to the brain, which resulted in the main cause of death, and Terry will be charged with murder. Now, in movies, they've taught us that anytime somebody kills somebody, it's automatically murder. But legally, in real life, murder is not that easy to convict on. TK's attorney argued that for him to be found guilty of murder, the prosecutors had to prove that he had previously known that throwing a single punch would, quote, generate a high chance of killing someone or critically wounding them. Ultimately, though, Terry will be acquitted on the murder charges and convicted of aggravated battery, which he ended up getting sentenced for 5 years in prison for. Now, depending on how you're looking at it, this could look like he got off pretty easy, all things considered. Josiah's family would also file a wrongful death suit against Terry, seeking damages of exceeding $50,000. Now, at the end of the day, Terry had a huge career. He was one of the more known skaters to the non-skating world at large. He, along with Stevie Williams, had made leaps to introduce the sport to tons of kids from the hood who previously thought that it really wasn't something that they did. And he had made tons of money off sponsorships and brand deals along the way. But thanks to one moment of bad decision making, it's all came crashing down on him. It's almost like, what's the odds? I mean, how many street fights happen every day around the world and this never happens? I don't know if you believe in destiny or not, but it almost seems as though this was destined to be a part of his story. Either that or he was the unlucky winner of the Anomaly Prize. I mean, I'm sure he probably feels like shit too, because the guy was his friend. Terry has always had a long history of being erratic and quick to get violent with people close to him. But this is the worst case scenario of what could happen if you don't learn to control your emotions. It's also a great example of why street fights are generally a bad idea. Most fights end up with both parties walking away virtually okay, but you never know. You could be that anomaly one day. 5 years is not that crazy, and he is only 37, so maybe he can take this as a learning experience. Hopefully when he gets out, he can use this as a way to try to reach back out to young kids so that they can learn from his mistakes. I mean, after all, he definitely owes a debt to society because this was so silly and very unnecessary. Regards to the family of Josiah. But what do you think? Should he have gotten more time? Do you think he can recover from this? Hit us in the comment section and let us know. And if you made it this far, then we hope that means you enjoyed the video. And if so, hit that like button for me. Liking and sharing the videos is the best way to get the YouTube algorithms to notice us and continue to suggest us to more people. And if you want to be updated whenever we drop a new episode, then hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell. That way you will be dinged when a new video drops. But with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out. Until next time, peace.